Okay, so today we're going to talk about doing a pre-trip inspection. Granted, it's not one of the most glamorous parts of our job, but it's something we need to do. Safety is the utmost importance in the trucking industry, and as professional drivers, it's our responsibility to do all we can to stay safe and keep the motoring public safe around us and make sure everyone gets home safely. Accidents and breakdowns roadside, they don't do any of us any good. You end up with late deliveries, angry customers, lost revenue for the company and the drivers, and the only people that benefit from it are tow truck operators and road service providers. And, you know, they just soon keep the money in-house as give it to them. In the effort of saving time, we're going to go over a few things that we need to be on the lookout for all the way around the truck. One of the things is tires. Steer tires, the tread depth needs to be 1/8 inch. Your drive tires and your trailers have to be a minimum of 16. Don't let them get that far. If you got a tire getting thin, contact the shop. Don't wait till it's a violation. I mean, they're really good at keeping tires on the tracks. So if you get one that's getting down, let them know. They can get tires ordered so they have them. They'll get you taken care of. The same way, if you find a trailer with a thin tire somewhere, even if it's not yet a violation, let the shop know. They can be on the lookout for that trailer. If it gets to Bangor, they can throw a tire on it. It's a lot cheaper and easier to do it in-house than it is to have it done roadside. On the tires, we run mainly duals on our drives. Again, tread depth, any bulges in the sidewalls, cuts in the sidewalls, steel sticking out through, anything in between the tires. Tire inflation. We run 100 PSI in all our tires. Ideally, they should be gauged every day. We realize that most guys aren't willing to do that, but you should do it a minimum of once a week. Every pre-trip, post-trip inspection, anytime that you change equipment, go around with your thumper, hit them. If something feels wrong, hit it with a gauge and make sure. All our equipment uses pass-through caps. You don't need to take the cap off to gauge it. Just come down, run your finger across the top of that cap just to knock any dust off. Put your cap on, test it, and you're done. Move on to the next tire. It's really quick and easy. Most of our trailers are running super singles. We have an inflation system on them. We can't check the pressure. The system has a light on the front. You can see it in the mirror going down the road. If that comes on when you hook to a trailer in the morning, don't be concerned. Due to temperature fluctuations, the pressures can run a little different. It'll be higher in the afternoon when it's run. It'll be lower in the morning. The system will sense that and it'll try to build the pressure back up. If that light stays on more than 10 or 15 minutes going down the road, you might have a problem. You want to check on it, see what's going on. The first few minutes going down the road, pay no attention to it. It's just telling you that the system is working. And again, when you check pressures, you want to do it cold in the morning. If you check them in the afternoon or after you've been going down the road, your reading can be off by 20% or more. Airlines. The rubber airlines and the hard plastic ones, if they're rubbing against themselves or another hose or a part of the frame, if it's enough to make a shiny clean spot on the hose, that is a violation. That's a chafing airline. That is just going to get worse. It's not going to heal itself. When it gets to the point where it runs through the outer lining on the hose of the line and you can see the cord or the white lining on a hard plastic line, that's an out-of-service violation. If you get stopped roadside, you're going to be calling road service because they're not going to let you run with it. We have hose separators that snap on. They're really easy. If the hose is rubbing together, you snap them in between. Sometimes just a cable tie around them, holding them together so they're not moving against something will do the trick. I realize none of us want to be mechanics, but if you can throw a cable tie on and be good to go, it takes you a minute to do it. Why wouldn't you? The next thing is loose bolts. If you see anywhere on the frame, fifth wheel, suspension, a bolt or a nut that either has a shiny ring around it or has a rust-colored circle of rust, dust on it, that bolt is probably loose. Particular attention needs to be paid to lug nuts, especially after the wheel's been off. If they've had a tire changed or brake work done and the tire's been off the truck, when you get the truck back, you want to check and verify that all the lug nuts are tight and you want to pay close attention for the next 2 or 3 days, because usually if they're going to loosen up, it's going to be in the first few hundred miles. That's a critical time to watch, but you need to check on them all the time. Okay, so now we're going to start our pre-trip, and we're going to start under the hood here on the passenger side. You just want to look the engine over. You don't want to see any hoses loose or chafing. You don't want to see any fluids leaking. You can check your belts down here, make sure they're not frayed or cracked and they have the right tension. Antifreeze level, there's a max line on the tank. It wants to be up there when it's cold. You can look at your suspension down in here. You can check your springs, your spring hangers, your U-bolts, air lines to your brakes on your front axle. Just general overall condition. Look for any loose bolts. You got a good chance to look at your tire here. You want to check the oil in your hub. You can check your lug nuts. It's a good chance to gauge your tires. And you also want to be aware of any oil leaking from the hub, either inside or out. It could be a wheel seal leaking, which is a potential problem. Your hood hinges. Just that general condition under the hood. You don't want anything loose, rattling. It looks like it's ready to fall off, broken, missing bolts or anything like that. Now we'll go over to the other side. And the same thing, you got a good view of the springs. You want to make sure there's no broken springs. You can grab the steering arm and rock it. You can look for play on your drag link. You can also grab them and shake them to see. You don't want any leaks on your power steering, because your engine oil dipstick is here, and this is the power steering reservoir for your power steering oil. And like the other side, just general condition of the engine, belts, hoses, no missing bolts, no cracks. It's a chance to check your windshield and your inspection sticker while you're right here. You'll never be any closer. There again, you can check this tire around both sides, your hub oil. This unit has disc brakes. They're really, really tough to see. There's no adjustment on them, but it's really tough to see line and thickness. There isn't an indicator, but it's really tough to see. It's kind of hidden down underneath, but get with the shop, and if you have any questions, and they can show you what you really need to be looking for on that. Just the newer trucks have discs. Most of them still have drums, so you have a slack adjuster here that you don't want over 1 inch of play on that. You want to make sure your can's secure and you can see your linings, and we'll cover drum brakes a little later. And under the back, we're going to do this today without a trailer on. I realize most of the time when you do a pre-trip, you will have a trailer on, but it's just so much easier to see what we're looking at here today. And it's the same as the front. You want to look at your suspension, make sure there's no missing bolts, there's no pieces missing, no cracks, breaks. You can look at your frame rails, your fifth wheel mounting plates, torque rods, drive shafts. So you got your air lines here on the rear axle, and you can see ahead of the fifth wheel. You can see them again up there. This pin right here on the caliper is a wear indicator for the linings. You can see there's steps on it. When you get to the last step, that means those linings are getting thin and they need to look at being replaced. If you see that situation on your truck, get with a shop and they will schedule service for you. Just anytime you're unhooked from a trailer and you get a chance, just take a quick look down, because you can see so much more looking at it from this angle than you can with a trailer on. There again, like I said, I realize most of the time you're going to be doing this with a trailer, and it is a little tougher. So anytime you can make it easier on yourself, you're better off to do it that way. Now we're going to move on with the general basic pre-trip. I've turned the lights on in the 4-ways. So the first thing you do is come around, check your headlights, check your turn signals, make sure that everything's working on the front, your visor lights. Reach back in, change your beams, make sure your low beams are working. You come back, check them again. Okay, now your headlights are done. You can shut them off and move around the truck. So you just want to check general condition, make sure nothing's loose. Your steps, your def tank, your straps are solid, your cap's on tight, your fuel tank same way. Your straps are solid, there's no chafing, there's no leaks, there's no cracks on mounting hardware, there's no chafing on the lines. Back in this area, check your air lines going back to your trailer. Make sure they're not chafing. That's a really common area for chafing. We see that in DOT inspections. Good chance to check your inspection sticker. This trailer has a federal sticker. That date is the date it was inspected. That's good until May of 2020. If it has a Maine sticker, that is the date it expires, so you need to be aware of that. Quarter fenders, we've already checked the tires, lug nuts, but you need to do that on your general walk around. Underneath, whenever you hook to a trailer, you want to make sure you're hooked. All our fifth wheels are the same. You can see the bolt sticking out of the front of the fifth wheel. If that nut isn't in against the fifth wheel, that fifth wheel is not latched. You need to unhook and see why. Once that's hooked, that nut will sit flush just like that one is. The handle will go in, but if that nut's not in, it's not latched. It's not safe to run with. We've done most of the tractor under here, but you can check your lights on the back of your tractor. Look at your cross members on your trailer, particularly over the landing gear. That's where we have the most problem. Check all your mounting bolts for your landing gear. Make sure your landing gear is up all the way, your handle is stowed. You can look underneath and check your cross members down the length of the trailer. Make sure your skirtings are all secured. As we move down, just look at the general condition of the trailer. There's no big scars, there's no holes, nobody's backed into it. And check the marker lights. You should have a turn signal there in the middle of the trailer along with the marker light. When we get back in this area, one of the biggest problems we see, especially with the older trailers, is the cross members over the front of these slide rails. As they get old, they'll get weak and they'll start breaking loose from the cross members. And as they get worse, they'll break further and further back. You want to keep an eye on that. Usually if your front is still hooked solid, the rest are all right, but you want to look for cracks over the rail. Your tandem hoses is another area of concern. As we slide tandems back and move them ahead at shippers, these hoses get stretched and recoiled and stretched and recoiled, and it has a way of working the keepers around so they're not where they need to be. So you need to pay attention to those, make sure they haven't moved to the point where they're chafing. Make sure your return springs are where they need to be, they're not rubbing on their lines. Make sure all 4 pins on your slider rails are engaged, so your subframe is solid. When you go under, you can look in here. This trailer has disc brakes. There's no adjustment on those that we need to be concerned with. The only thing we really have to keep an eye on is to make sure there's no cracks in the rotors themselves, which you can see in here, and the lining thickness, which we can see from the back. And just look at your air lines. Most of the manufacturers do a really good job at routing air lines now, but keepers move, springs break. Just keep an eye on them, make sure nothing is moved and the lines aren't touching anything. There again, all your mounting bolts, your brake cans, just make sure everything's solid, nothing looks out of place. So now we're under a trailer with drum brakes. They're really more common. A lot of our older trucks and trailers both have them. They've been in use for many, many years. We are making a step to disc, but there are a lot of these in the fleet, so we still need to know how to look at them. When you do this, you want to check your drum, make sure there's no cracks or breaks in that. Your lining thickness, you can see this step here. That's actually a wear indicator. When it gets down below that line, the brakes need to be replaced. You want to check adjustment on these. The angle between the push rod and the slack adjuster should be no more than 90 degrees with the brakes applied. Make sure everything's tight, nothing's loose here. Your cotter pins are in, your clevis pins in, everything's hooked together. And like I said, you can see adjustment on both axles from here. You can check the drums from the front, so you get a view all the way around. But just like the disc brakes, just look at your air lines, your brake cans, make sure everything's secure, nothing's chafing, nothing's got holes in it, doesn't belong, and everything's good to go down the road. Now we can check the lug nuts on the trailer tire. This line here is to the inflation system. There's no way to check pressure in that. It's all done automatically. The trailer takes care of itself. It uses the air system from the truck to do it. When we go into the back, we can see the caliper to see where the brakes are. And this is the rotor here. As long as that's, you know, not cracked or anything, that's fine. On either side of it are the linings. Now those need to be a minimum of an eighth inch thick. If they're not, you need to get with a shop. They need to be replaced. It's a wear item. They wear out. It's just something we need to keep an eye on. At 1/16 of an inch, you get put out of service for it, so you never want to let them get that far down. And there again, when you come under here from the back, you can see things different than you can from the front. You can see all your air lines to your cans, you know, just so you have a better idea of what general condition is underneath the trailer. And you can check your cross members back behind when you're under the back here. When you come around the back, we can check the lights because you need a marker light. I've got the turn signals activated so you can see them working on both sides. Check your license plate, your plate light, the conspicuity tape, you know, all the lights across the top. Anytime you hook to a trailer that doesn't have a seal on it, it's good practice to open the doors and see what's inside. If it's a loaded trailer, that it is actually loaded and it's loaded with the correct product and it's secured for transport. If it's supposed to be an empty trailer, verify that it is empty, it doesn't have part of another load on it, and there's no damage to the trailer, holes in the roof, scars in the wall, anything like that. If it's a sealed trailer, there's nothing you can do. Never break the seal to look inside the trailer. As we come around the other side, it's the same thing. You go up through just overall condition, your conspicuity tape, there's no damage to the walls of the trailer. Check your lug nuts, your tires for the tread depth, cracks, bulges, anything that doesn't belong on it. Come back up through, check your lights again. And look at your landing gear from this side, because now you're looking at it from a different angle. You might see something that you don't see from the other side. Back, check your tires again, all your lug nuts, leaking oil, anything like that, suspension, APU, make sure your cover's on tight, everything's secure there. Your midship lights, and you're back to your front wheel again where we started. But we haven't checked the brake lights yet. Okay, now this might seem a little redneck, but it works for me and it's cheap and easy. You hook a bungee cord onto the trolley handle, pull the trolley handle down. Now your trailer brakes are applied. So now we can go back and check trailer brakes. And also when I do that, I put air to the trailer system. So if there's any leaks back there, I can hear it walking back. So just walk back. We got brake lights on the tractor. And we have brake lights on the trailer. And there's no audible air leaks from underneath. That truck and trailer should be safe to go down the road after we do the pre-trip inside the cab. Okay, so now we're in here in the cab, behind the wheel. Check your glass, make sure it's clean, there's nothing broken. Your mirrors are adjusted, you know, they're not broken if they're not adjusted right. Make sure your switches work to adjust them. You need wipers and washers. That's a federal requirement. So you want to make sure your wipers work. You also need a defroster, which is down here. Make sure that works. Truck registration is vital. That should be in the truck. You also need the cab cards for the ELD that shows how to operate it. If you get pulled in roadside and you don't have them, that is a violation, and every truck should have them. You also need a copy of a paper logbook, and no, you cannot use that for a primary log, but you need to have one in case of an ELD failure. You wanted a good chance to check your inspection sticker on your truck. You can see it from right here. My fire extinguisher, I saw it when I got in. It's right here next to the seat. It's secure, it's charged. My triangles are under the bunk. You always want to make sure they're there. Starting and by the end of the year, all of our trucks will be required to have a spill kit in them. Looks like that. It's something that we're starting to get into, so everybody will have to have one of them. You also want your green vest if anytime you're out of the truck, either in any of our terminals or at a customer. Now you want to check your air system, your warning buzzers, pump them down. About 50 pounds, the warning light should come on. The alarm will come on once you start the truck. Volvo needs the engine running for the alarm to start. With the brakes in, you pump it down further. And at 20 to 40 pounds, your parking brake button should pop out. Now you want to restart the truck. Now you hear your low air alarm is working. Building the air up shouldn't take more than 45 seconds from, I think the number is 85 to 100 PSI. We won't have that problem. This is a new truck. Once we get up to about 60 pounds, the alarm's going to stop, the lights are going to go out. We're good to go there. Now on our 2016 and newer trucks, that would be approximately unit 3170 and up. They have what's called the pre-trip assistant, and you can access it on the dash screen. You use these switches on the steering wheel. The older trucks, it's on the wiper stalk to get to it. Yeah, if I hit the right button. Okay, we go down to pre-trip assistant, and we can do an exterior light inspection test. You hit that button, now that's going to cycle through all the lights on the outside of the truck. It's going to look like a dance hall out there, but you can check all your lights with one quick walk around. When you're done with that, you can go to the light switch test, and that'll test all your switches that operate your lights on the truck. Or you can scroll down to the air brake leak down test, and that will talk you through. You need to release the brakes. You have to be over 100 PSI, and you hold the brake down for 60 seconds, and it measures your pressure drop. You have an initial drop of around 5 PSI when you step on the brake, and you're allowed 4 PSI leakage per minute. So as long as you're under 10 PSI on your leakage, you should be good to go. And with that, you should be all set to go. Be safe out there. Happy motoring. We're going to talk about sliding tandems and scaling a load. It would be nice if we had a loaded trailer to work with. Unfortunately, we don't today. I've got a strap run across about where the back of a load would come. That's a good representation. The easiest way to tell to ballpark these if you don't have scales available is you count the logistics posts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The back of the load is 5 posts in. So you want to remember that and come around to the side of the trailer. These rivets is where the logistics posts are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where the back of the load is. If the load is loaded even, you want the back of this tire even with the back of the load. So we want to move these tandems ahead to scale the load out. To do that, you must make sure your brakes are set on your trailer, and underneath the suspension on the front is this little button. You pull that out, that retracts the pins. Now you can slide the tandems. Now if you get in the truck and push a trailer button in, it's going to push those pins back out. That's a safety feature, so you don't go down the road without the pins in. Now we've got the wheel slid, so the back of the tire is almost under that logistics post. So we're pretty close to where we need to be. What you do now is you push that button in, back it up ahead. That's going to move the trailer back. probably, oh, that one's lined right up, so that's right where it's going to be. The pins come out through. Usually it doesn't happen. The pins will be in between the holes and you have to go forward and back to line the holes up. This trailer here has 6-inch spacing on the holes. You can roughly plan on 75 to 100 pounds an inch for weight changing. So if you're over 1,500 pounds on the trailer, you've got to move 1,500 pounds to the truck. You want to move 15, 16 inches, something like that, in that ballpark, depending on how heavy the load is and how it's loaded. This guideline is for a trailer that's loaded even front to back. If it's loaded heavy on the back, you're going to want the wheels a little behind the load. If it's loaded heavy on the front, you want them a little ahead. At no point should the center of your rear axle be beyond the 43-foot mark. That's a major violation. There's a substantial fine associated with that, even when you're empty. Your wheels should never be beyond the 43-foot mark when you're on the road. The only time they're beyond that is in the shipper or receiver while you're loading or unloading. Some of our trailers have different spacing on the holes on the slider rails, but the rule still applies. 75 to 100 pounds an inch is roughly what you're looking at. You always want your trailer brakes set when you're adjusting, and you move the trailer the way you want to move the weight. So if you're heavy on the trailer and you want more weight on the tractor, you drive ahead. If you're heavy on the tractor and you want more weight on the trailer, you move back. You have to think of this as a seesaw back here and where you put the weight to adjust it. Now a quick tip is how far to move. It's when you get in the truck, this step here is 30 inches long. You get in the truck and you sight down, find a rock in the pavement, a crack in the pavement. Okay, you want to move 15 inches, you want to move about half the length of that step. So you just take a sight on the ground, you go forward or back, whichever way you need to do till you're halfway. That's going to put you pretty close. Remember, at no point should you be over 34,000 pounds on either the drives or the trailer. Anything over that is a violation. If you can't get it scaled without putting the trailer wheels past the 43-foot mark, then you need to get a hold of someone. That load needs to be reworked because you can't go down the road with it. Any questions, you need to get with safety on that. Maintenance issues, get with the shop. Drive safe and happy motoring. A lot of our older trailers have an easy pull. They're easy. You pull it out and drop it in the slot, and that holds the rod out. The pins are retracted. You slide it where you need to be. When you're done, kick it back up in, slide it to the hole you want, and you're good to go. If you have a trailer that you can't pull the handle to release the pins, we have these nice, they call them a stay-rat tool. They're a great tool for assisting on that. There's a plastic lock on here to keep it from going off inside the truck. You pop that off, and you just go under and you hook that on your handle. You just give it a quick pull, and that's got a pressure in that. Will hold that, and we'll pop them pins out. Now you're going to have to get in the truck and roll back and forth to relieve the pressure on the pins, and you'll see this come out. Now that's popped out, and you can see this from the mirror, so you know when it's pulled out, and that'll hold the rod out and your pins released. You can slide your tandems wherever they need to be. When you get them where you need to be, just push in, give it a little turn, release it, then go forward or back, whichever way you need to drop into the next available hole, and you're good to go.